Smirking, James reached his left hand up to feel at his neck. It felt the same as always, a smooth line from his chin to his collarbones. Smooth. James felt up and down several times, noting no bump in the middle where he knew there should be one. No Adam's apple. What on earth? James breathed rapidly, checking his throat again. It was gone. When he swallowed, his throat went through the motion, but there was no rising lump that he had always felt before when swallowing. I'm afraid that is the most obvious symptom that we have so far observed. We estimate as more and more of your original form is replaced, there will be other, much more noticeable changes. What? James shouted, his hand still on his throat. What symptoms? Please calm down, James. Your mother is right outside, and I don't think she wants to hear that kind of language. I know I don't. I don't care. James shouted, looking at the doctor with pure rage in his eyes. What symptoms? To be honest, we're not sure. We assume that your bone structure will be the first and most subtle change. After that, we expect the standard development of primary and secondary sexual characteristics for your gender. For my gender? You mean my sex? James' voice took on a more calm tone, but the intonations were more icy, with a vicious comment. Primary sex characteristics? A female body? Is that what you're saying? Calm down, James. To put it into blunt terms, yes. You are correct. Hubbard's voice matched James' icy tone with one of his own. Genetically, you are currently female, and you will, thanks to this condition, take on all of the characteristics associated with that. Female? James breathed heavily, his eyes threatening to tear. Talk about a change. One thing, oh God. He had sworn he would do anything. It looked like he would have to do exactly that. He looked away from the doctor, trying desperately not to sob. No, please no. He looked at his hands, thinking that he could already see them shrinking, losing the strength that would in later years allow him to play the guitar for hours on end. I know this is a lot to accept. Hubbard spoke to James back, continuing the conversation in that same unemotional tone. I've already spoken to your mother. She'd like to see you as soon as we finish talking here. Home? James asked, his eyes wide. You're not going to keep me here? James, believe it or not, all doctors are not glory hounds looking for a new disease to publish on. Your mother practically begged me not to make this into a research circus, and I agree with her. What you need right now is family and time to adjust, not a bunch of us lab coats poking at anatomy you're not even used to. He stood up to leave. I'll send your mother in. He spoke quietly and turned towards the door. He was halfway there when James addressed him. I'm sorry. I'm just really scared. James' apology seemed to brighten the mood of the doctor, who turned and smiled at him. Hey, I don't understand, but I've helped lots of people with tough conditions. Yours is frightening, but it's an experience that many people would kill for. The smile on his face brightened. Like me. With that said, he left the room, leaving James alone with his thoughts, and stood there for several minutes, just holding his hand. In a way, James was comforted by the touch and the affection that his mother was showing him. She hadn't shown that affection in years. His multiple trips home and constant fighting with her husband had taken their toll on the relationship. All of that was gone now, the years melting back to a time when he was, first and foremost, her son. I don't know what to say, honey. And commented again, looking down at James. I mean, this isn't something in my field. It's not in mine either, Mom, but I think I'm going to be an expert on it. James replied, trying to make light of the situation, and had had longer than him to come to grips with the situation, dealing with it since this morning. I know you're scared, honey, she stated, seeming to not hear his words. I think the most important thing for all of us is to keep you safe during this situation. She broke off, unsure of how to continue. Mom, can we just put this out in the open? James said, unwilling to continue with the euphemisms. I'm going to change. I'm going to turn into a woman. Well, yes. And shook her head, seeming about to burst into tears. I'm so sorry. James looked into the face of his mother. He hadn't felt so badly for her in years. Perhaps it was the depth of emotion that she was showing him, but he felt the need to comfort her. I think you deal with it okay, Mom. James tried to put on a brave face, to say the words that she needed to hear. Inside, his mind was still racing with the urge to scream. A maelstrom of thoughts was engulfing his soul, unwilling to accept the rational answers that his mind was trying desperately to reach. "Oh, honey, it's not that. I'm just so worried about you." She pulled a chair over next to the bed and sat on it, still clasping his hand. "I can't. I don't." She paused for an instant before continuing, "I want you to know that you can ask me anything." "I mean that." James wanted to spit out a sarcastic remark. His bitterness towards his parents was still an automatic reflex that wanted to go off. Consciously, he yanked back the thought, along with his denial, trying instead to focus on what she was saying. "Thanks, Mom." The only words that came from his mouth were the ones that he would indeed have spoken at 16. It was all that he could say. He spoke them with a calm cadence, trying to keep the panic he still felt out of his voice. "I don't hurt or anything," he went on, trying to convince himself as much as her. I itch all over sometimes, but it seems to go away just as fast as it starts." That was true. It felt sometimes like a section of his skin would burst into flames, but as he moved to scratch the skin, the burning sensation would vanish. "That's good. Dr. Hubbard says that it should only take about a month till you're back to normal." "Yeah, he told me." "Have you thought about how you feel about this?" Anne's question was piercing. James suddenly realized that this was one of his mother's probing questions. He recalled as a younger man being thrown into therapy numerous times after just such a question. The last time had been right before he moved out. Oh, and a fat lot of good that did him, James thought, remembering how close he had been to ending his life. "I'm scared." That answer seemed noncommittal. At least it might stall her for a while. "Anything else, honey?" This is a really big change." And said it like they were talking about getting his hair cut. The detachment was obvious in her voice. "I'm glad. Glad I'm not going to die." That was the truth. Even if he had to deal with a few changes. Ugh, James grimaced at the unfortunate, unintended joke that his mind had produced. "I heard what you said to the doctor." And said, her voice taking on a frosty tone. "I need to know that you're going to be okay with this." James' free hand came up to pick at a loose wire on his braces that had been bothering him. The wire bent away from his gums, relieving some slight discomfort. "I'm not sure, Mom. This is still kinda weird to me." An understatement if he had ever made one, of course. Visions of mental institutions were dancing in his head, and he knew that he could not give the slightest hint of what the truth really was. "Would it help if I said that half of the people in the world are women?" And said, her voice lightening slightly. James knew he had passed the danger zone. She was concerned, but the look in her eyes told him that she was moving past the psychotherapist reflex. "More than that. I remember Mr. Kazarian saying something about women making up 52% of the world." The Kaiser had been Mr. Kazarian, one of the instructors at the high school that he had graduated from 2 months previously. James remembered that he had hated Mr. Kazarian, and making a joke of his name would help to show that everything was fine. How did that come up? Anne questioned, her curiosity piqued. "I don't remember." "Speaking of which, have you thought about how this is going to affect your schoolwork?" "I didn't really. I haven't given it much thought, I think we might want to consider you taking some time off." "Time off?" "Well, you're going to need time to adjust to everything." James groaned, trying to think fast. Dear God, the last thing that he needed was to spend a year puttering around his hometown of Monterey. There was even less to do there than in Idaho. The last thing he wanted to do was to spend another year drifting along, doing some menial job while he wasted his free time with the Alvarado Street crowd. Remembering how his acquaintances had treated the women in his little circle, the prospect was even less palatable. "I think I should still go to Moscow." The words were plain, unadorned. "Honey, I know you want to, but there's still next year." Another year, hanging around his home on the hill, waiting for college to start while his stepfather Randall and his sister Elaine mocked him. That wasn't going to happen. "Mom, I know you want me at home right now." James chose his words carefully. "But look at it from my point of view. I've got my diploma. Sitting around this town waiting to adjust isn't going to do me any good. But there's so much you don't know about." And broke off her comment, trying to find the right words. "Being a woman? Mom, I may be turning into a female, but that doesn't make me a girl. James, are you listening to yourself? Being a female doesn't make you a girl. I'm not. I'm always going to be me. James, I may not have the same body, but it's going to be me. And I'll be the biggest tomboy on campus, he added silently. But it's dangerous. You could get yourself hurt or robbed and said, looking into her son's eyes again. There was a real fear present in them. James knew the last word that she had left out without her even saying it. Hurt. That's what she thought. Too late, Mom, he silently cursed. It happened to me as a guy. This time I'm ready for anything they throw at me, and I don't care if I do have to get along with a different body. I think I can take care of myself, Mom. Are you sure? I think you should take some time to think it over. I don't need to. I know right now. He glanced at the door and the force still in his hand. Can we get out of here soon? I'm starving. They were just waiting for us to talk. She stood and walked to the door, returning with a small bag that James recognized as a book bag he had used for years before it had finally split its seams. I brought some clothes for you from home. Thanks. I guess I'll meet you outside, he said, opening the bag that his mother had just handed to him. All right. You'll be okay? And asked, standing. Yeah, and nodded, turning to leave the room. As she did so, a nurse in scrubs came in. The nurse barely looked at James, merely removing the four with a brief tug and covering the slight wound with a bandage. She made a note on her clipboard and left as suddenly as she had arrived, closing the door behind her. Unsteadily, James swung his feet to the right and lowered them to the chill surface of the floor. He stood and pulled the hospital gown up and over his head, not bothering to undo the laces. He looked down at the youthful body that greeted his gaze. He ran his view over the chest, which was so smooth compared to the one he had had only a few days before. It was true that time does make its impact upon men, but he was amazed at how, well, for lack of a better term, slim his body seemed to be. Shucking the thought, he rapidly dressed in the boxer shorts, followed by a white t-shirt underneath a red polo shirt. The blue jeans were next, rising up and coming to rest. He zipped up, noting a slight tightness about the hips. White socks and tennis shoes were the next item, and he rapidly tied each shoe after pulling them on. Then, at the bottom of the book bag, James spotted his old leather jacket. He pulled it out, noting with amusement the cut-off left sleeve. When he had been younger, The Road Warrior had been his favorite movie. As a result, he had snipped and tied the left arm of his leather jacket in order to be more like his hero. Of course, doing that with a bomber jacket just made the effect look silly. He slid the jacket on, pulling his hair out of the way. Smiling, he unzipped one of the top pockets and removed a light tan rubber band. Pulling his hair back, he deftly wrapped the band about the strands, forming a quick ponytail. Zipping up the book bag, he slung it over his left shoulder and marched to the door. He paused at the door, looking back into the hospital room. It was not perfect, but it would have to do. The same as the rest of his life. Smiling at his pathetic bit of philosophy, he opened the door and stepped into the hallway. He noted the nurse's station and his mother standing at it. He waved with one hand as he pulled the door shut behind him. He walked briskly up to Anne, who was signing a piece of paperwork. She nodded at the nurses and turned to James. Ready? She inquired, gesturing in the direction of the exit. James merely nodded in reply and followed her as she began to walk. They passed several corridors, all with the blank and isolated look of a standard, boring hospital. They soon arrived at the main entrance and pushed open the double doors into the warm California sunlight. James looked out over the small rolling hills that were visible here. The hospital was on the edge of a small town, and the waving blonde color of the grass reminded him of his own hair. He continued on, following his mother towards a large white station wagon with plastic runners on each side, painted to look wooden. He smirked as he got into the plastic-coated front seat. You had to love the cars of the 80s. The car started immediately and shifted the car into reverse, backing it out of the parking spot. She changed gears again and drove forward. The car left the parking lot and began to roll down a long, two-lane highway.